Dominic Testo, thanks for joining the MedTech Unboxed podcast. It's been a long time coming, my friend.
Thanks for setting this up. It's been a while. We've been talking about this, and I haven't done anything like this in a while. So I'm excited to sort of get back in and just chat sales instead of just doing the daily grind. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah. It's an interesting story how I learned about you and how we met. I was putting together a business plan for an organization.
Mm-hmm.
Sales team, inside sales, marketing strategy, new website, the whole 9 yards. It was really fun. And I wanted to get a book to kind of help me get some ideas. And I don't know how I found this book, but Mike Weinberg.
Good book. It's a real good book.
This is the book, The Essential Handbook for Prospecting and New Business Development. And so there's all kinds of notes in this book. Great book. This is the book I would highly recommend. And I was like, maybe Mike has a podcast and there's some episodes that I could listen to. And I found you on one of the episodes. Yeah. And it was on a flight from Charlotte to Grand Rapids, Michigan. And it resonated with me because there's a lot of sales books, a lot of sales hype about selling SaaS software and things like that. What sure was interesting to me is it's manufacturing, specialty, complex, customized components, in your case, silicone components. Manufacturing's hard, right?
It's a tough one. Yeah. It is, but it can be done.
Yep, it can be. And so that was what really resonated with me. And I listened to that podcast episode, like I said, on that flight. And it's like, I need to meet this guy. And it was pretty easy to reach out to you. As a hunter, I reached out to another hunter, right?
That's right. Yeah. I appreciate you doing that because I enjoyed, following you from that point on.
Likewise. So I'm really glad to have you on the podcast. And the reason I wanted to invite you is something recently came up. A buddy of mine that operated a very successful contract manufacturing organization, sold it, started a consulting business. And one of the things he does because of this vast network is basically a recruiter for other contract manufacturers.
Okay. Yeah.
And he was hired to bring on a few business development managers for a client of his, contract manufacturing, specifically to generate new business.
Mm-hmm.
And a month in, he calls me up because we're both well connected. And he's like, Steve, where are all the hunters? What happened? Everybody's an order taker now. There's the mindset's not there to hunt, to prospect, to use all the tools that we have available, digital, phone, email, whatever it might be. It's just, it's changed. And I wanted to bring you on and kind of get your thoughts on, prospecting, hunting, and maybe what has changed and the mindset of a hunter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, we could probably have a 2-part series just on, prospecting and hunting and, why it's so difficult. And, literally we could take a piece of paper and we could write down, a list of 10 things. Mm-hmm. So I figure maybe we just start with it. In my opinion, a couple of the big contributing factors here, and then maybe we unpack it from there, if that's all right.
Let's do it.
So I think there's a mix of, mindset and confidence that go together where there's some lacking. And then you marry that up with maybe a lack of guidance, or I'll call it mentorship. Yeah. And so I think when you put those things together, it's going to be really hard for somebody to be successful being a hunter. And, you got to take one step back and then look at the environment we're in. I mean, it's just like a machine gun of spam that comes at us, whether it be some LinkedIn message, real or fake, or automated email. I mean, I delete 50 emails a day sometimes, or stuff that goes directly to my junk. And so the market, right, that they're sort of just annoyed and numb to getting prospecting emails. Yeah. So it's very tough when you already have this hectic society where nobody has any time. And then you throw an unprepared hunter, out into the wild to do the job. It's really difficult. And I think a lot of those things can be fixed. The book you showed in the beginning, New Sales Simplified, I mean, it's sort of a blueprint. If you can't train somebody up, or you have a regional rep and you can't get in the car with them or on a plane with them regularly, or there's no seasoned vet, that can mentor them, at least that's a first start. But, bringing it back, I just think there's a mindset and confidence issue in the foundation of what's going on. And then you need the guidance from there, because if the mindset and the confidence is there, then it's just a little training, learn your story, right? Learn your talking points, and get out there, and you just need a little guidance.
Yeah.
So I really think it's a mindset confidence issue at the foundation of what's going on.
That mindset's important. Recently, maybe a year ago, I was on a call with somebody that was a colleague in a different department. He's given a presentation to somebody. He's like, wow, this guy's really good at presenting the company, the values. So I asked, hey, would you be interested in helping us in sales a little bit? There's a certain market segment that we're really not doing too well in, and we need to get more eyes on us about what we offer in that market.
Sure.
And he said, sure, I'd be glad to help. So we put a list together of 10 target accounts, gave him some sales tools. So a couple of months later, I asked his boss, hey, what happened there? Did he do anything? Well, nobody called him back, so he stopped. So we talk about mindset and sales. If you can't handle rejection, nobody calls you back. That's the starting point. Right?
Yes. That's right. That's just the first try.
Yeah.
You get 4 downs in football. You don't have to get a first down or a touchdown on the first down.
Right. Yeah. So just being able to handle rejection, and if nobody returns your email, a phone call, there's all these tools available. But you're right. You have to kind of get around all this spam and noise and try to get to the signal.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's an internal issue for people, because especially young sales reps, and even people that, may have moved from technical to sales, or people who got into sales a little later, they sometimes, and they view themselves like, I'm a nuisance, I'm annoying people. And the kind of the best people, they usually look at themselves like, well, I'm a business person. I have solutions. My company's been around for a very long time, and we've sold millions and millions and millions of dollars of product, right? So there's demand for my product. Somebody wants this and uses it, right?
Yeah.
So when you go in and you're sort of like, you have that you don't have that confidence, and you think you're being annoying, the prospect sees that too. But if you come in with business acumen, and you sort of know how to lay out the first couple sentences of a cold call, where they immediately think, okay, this is a professional. They understand my world. They understand my problems. Then you go from there. Because again, when you get on the phone and you start to show them some sort of lack of confidence, it's almost like a show of weakness, and that's going to turn them right off, because you're no different than any other salesperson, talking to them. And I just mentioned the phone. People I don't get that many phone calls anymore. And I'm an individual contributor, but since I have a presence on LinkedIn, I'm easy to get to. I would have, suppliers or people looking to get into my company call me. I really don't get it that much anymore. And so in my view, with all the automated spam and all the email, even text messages I get from lead generation people, it's probably the most opportune time ever to be creative and different, and get on the phone, as long as your confidence is there and your messaging is right. I even I make very targeted cold calls now. I've been 15 years into an industry, and I'm not going to, make 30, 40 calls a week. It's just not realistic at this point for what I'm doing. But when I do it, and especially if somebody cold, they don't know me, sometimes I even try something creative. I'll pick up the phone. If they pick up, I'll say, hey, I was going to connect with you on LinkedIn, and immediately send you a message with a link to my calendar. But I'm not an idiot, and so I'm calling you instead. And just something creative, get a chuckle, and then, go into what you need to go into, can be refreshing to people right now, because, the phone calls just don't seem to be what they once were. And, even what 25, 30 years ago, all you had was a phone
Yeah.
in the car. You didn't have email and you didn't have all these lead generation tools. I like to tell, the lead generation people that come after you with spam email, sometimes I respond and say, hey, I mean, how come I'm not emailing you?
Yeah.
Why did you generate my lead? Why are
Right.
you spamming me? I thought you're the lead generator. And so I think you can really be unique and different. But circling back, you got to have that confidence and mindset under your belt. Do not put the prospect on a pedestal, regardless if it's, middle level procurement or purchasing person, or it's the director of engineering or manufacturing that your target is. They're just people. I talked about this. One of the podcasts I did with Mike Weinberg, we talked a little bit about that. It's just a person on the other end. It's not somebody scary. So just go in there and be confident and do your thing.
Yeah, that's so important, the confidence and the creativity, right? There's so many tools available. And I remember when I was a young man in sales, just starting, and I was tasked to get meetings, to generate opportunities. And I was calling people and nobody was getting back to me. I was emailing people. And I got this list from one of the co-founders of the company that was well known in the industry. He gave me his list of people he's talked to. I was using that. Then one day I decided to say, hey, instead of saying I'm going to be in the area next week, can I stop by? I was like, hey, I'm going to be with such and such. Boom. Once I started name dropping, I could get meetings, and I would take this guy. He would go down to Florida. Oh, you come down to Florida with me. We're gonna have meetings all day. We'll stop at 4:00 and we'll go golfing. As long as I could take him golfing on the trip, I had him in, and I just had so many meetings after that. And it's just thinking about different ideas and trying to be creative.
Yeah, I mean, I can give you one story, and this is today they're a customer, but took me a long time. Some of the products that I sell at my company is like a flat manufactured sheet, cut off a roll. And so I couldn't get anywhere. So finally I took one of the sheets and I took a silver paint marker, and it's a pretty expensive material. It's actually infused with silver, believe it or not. And so I took a paint marker and I wrote the guy a note on the actual material, and said, hi, I'm a very expensive piece of silver filled, silicone rubber. And, I'd like you to look at me, sort of deal. And ever since then, I've got a great relationship with that company. And, we've sold them hundreds of thousands of dollars at this point. So yeah, that being creative, being creative will help you with that, little bit of nervousness or that lack of confidence. Just knowing that you're doing something different and creative. Years back, long time ago, my wife is in media sales, and they were having trouble getting in someplace. They bought like a video camera, and then recorded a message and said, you keep the camera, we'll get the meeting. But they recorded the rep on the camera. So I've heard of all different creative things. Hopefully your messaging is so good, and your value is so good where you don't need to do that. But when people are starting out, there are sometimes a need for something creative. But I think once you get past learning your story and learning how to approach people with value, you won't have to do some of the gimmicky stuff anymore. You'll just be able to attack it with a business acumen that'll work. But that comes later on a little bit. You got to start somewhere. So no shame in being creative.
Yeah, no, it's a good point about experience and years in the industry where you can just text a CEO of a company and say, hey, I'm in the area. Can I meet you? And you can have lunch like that.
Yeah.
Versus, over the weekend, I'm doing the podcast and I'm trying to do a little bit more with co-founders of medical device companies. And so I'm looking up some people, targets. I'm not trying to sell. I'm trying to get a meeting, a podcast still. Over the weekend, I sent a couple cold emails, LinkedIn messages. I didn't connect with them and then send them a message like you said. That's brutal, and I was able to secure 4 podcasts. On a Saturday, was sending some messages out with a confident pitch, and maybe they heard about me, but I don't even know. And so even today, as many people that I know and a huge network, I'm still hunting and cold calling all the time. Right.
Me too. Yeah.
Right. Like you said about, I think before we started, you had an interesting comment about being creative at the trade shows and how your approach to trade shows is a little different. And I'd like you to kind of comment on that. We weren't recording at the time, but I was telling you about MD&M West, which is the big MedTech show.
Mhm.
And you're talking about a little bit different strategy, if you don't mind sharing about what trade shows you might target.
Sure, sure. It's twofold, because you go to these shows and your company spends a lot of money, to put up the booth and hotels and flights, and it gets very expensive. And trade shows are really the long game.
Yeah.
What I see is, if you spend the money to sit at the booth, and you're just waiting for people to walk up, that's just part of the show. There's an entire convention center of booths of people in your industry. Even if it's a dead show and there's not that much traffic, then you have the opportunity to get out there, and go booth to booth, generating conversations. And, you don't need to do it annoyingly. You just need to be genuinely interested in what they're doing. And you walk away with, 50, 60 business cards and a bunch of conversations and referrals. So I look at trade shows as, a place to plant our flag, but also as a prospecting opportunity within the exhibitor list. You're there for 2 or 3 days. Go get value out of it. But what I think we were talking about before, some of these industry trade shows, companies tend to do the same 3 or 4 every single year for a decade. And so you're just seeing mostly the same people, same exhibitors. Walking traffic is typically going to be some of the same companies and industries, especially if it's regional. You want to be creative and do some prospecting. Go out there and especially if you're in niche manufacturing, technical sales, go find the unique trade shows. They might not be giant, but you might be the only company that does, what you do. I go to trade shows and sometimes there's 15 to 20 companies that I know they're different and they probably have their own value props. But to me, walking the show, they're just another X company. So my recommendation and what's really worked for my company is to find the shows that, you are unique there, right? You're the only one that does what you do. And I think it's pretty beneficial because, engineers and technical people and buyers and VPs, if there's a trade show in town, some people like to get out of the office and go walk it. They might not necessarily be looking for exactly, what that show has to offer, but you're going to meet new people. You're going to generate conversations, but you're going to be unique. You're going to be the only one within that group that does what you do or makes what you make. And I think it's a real good strategy. Not worrying about how big the show is or who's on the exhibitor list. Sometimes, people track down those exhibitor lists and, see all the big name companies, and they're just, divisions with people that might not even be your target at a huge booth that don't even want to be there. Maybe you should look at the exhibitor list where you don't know 80% of the companies, right? That's real prospecting, is going undercover what's going on there. And then to take it one step further, have a plan. Go through the exhibitor list, do some research. And, I know Mike Weinberg in that book you showed, he talks about creating a targeted finite list. Right. Maybe there's 200 people at the trade show, but find the 8 that you really want to talk to. Try to proactively approach them before you get there. That way you can walk up to the booth and say, hey, I actually spoke on the phone to Frank from marketing, and he said you guys would be there. And then you're not walking up, just like another salesperson. So we could do another podcast on literally the strategy of walking a trade show, preparing for a trade show, because there is value there. But if you sit at the booth, you can really tell the small private companies who spent a good dime, and it's meaningful money, and guys are out in the aisle, hey, come check this out. And then you see the giant corporation with the 3-ply carpet that's always so nice, and the coffee machine, and a bunch of people just sitting there on their phones.
Exactly. You just nailed it. You go by these booths and everybody's just sitting there on their phones when there's all these people.
I know.
So in this big building and all these potential targets, and you're on your phone. Sitting in the booth.
They usually do have coffee or beer at the end of the day, though, Steve.
All right, let's move on. That was really good input about trade shows and what you just mentioned in Mike's book about targeting, whether it's at a trade show and setting up, 5 target accounts that you're going to reach out to, have meetings, or just in general, 5, 10, 15 target accounts that you're going to really focus on developing,
Sure.
generating, relationships with, calling on. And that's the strategy that I use right now with my guys. So
Absolutely. You highlight the booth number, and your goal is not to sell them product. Your goal is to find out from the three people at that booth, who the director of engineering is. And,
yeah,
then it's very easy, because sometimes they're not going to give up the information, but, the business card is going to have the same email, sort of format. And
yeah,
if their engineering manager, they tell you who that is, then you can follow up a couple of days after the show and say, hey, I spoke to, Maria and Mark at the show, and then you're going in warm.
yeah,
Okay, he knows Maria and Mark. He knows you went to that trade show, and so you're probably going to get a reply on that, or again, you call up. Hey, I spoke to Mark and Maria.
yeah.
I got a few minutes. I'm not going to waste your time. I want to fill you in on a few things, and I saw this product on the table, and we make this that goes in it, or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's so many things you can do outside and involved in a trade show to help you prospect.
Yeah. Great input. Great thoughts there, Dominic. Thanks. I wanted to move on to something. All these things that we're talking about are for salespeople, hunting, and the process is so much fun. Booking the business is the reward, right? But the process is really fun.
Absolutely.
And while you're going through it, you're struggling. Maybe, like I said, maybe somebody didn't get back to you. You have to be creative and find these other ways. But after all that work, booking some business, reoccurring business, even better. I was talking to a buddy of mine recently, great salesperson, was really successful. And of course, what happens to great successful salespeople? They become sales managers or the VP of sales, right? And he was telling me, look, I got 60 people working for me.
Wow, that's a lot.
I got sales team inside. I said, I haven't talked to a customer in 6 months. I'm on Salesforce looking at the pipeline, giving reports. He's like, I'm not having fun.
Mm-hmm.
And he had an opportunity to kind of to go to a more of not a startup, but a smaller company and get back in the field and solve problems and be consultative. And he couldn't be happier. And so I think this happens to a lot of really good salespeople. They reach kind of maybe a peak and they want to go into sales management, but it's not always what it's cracked up to be. So I want to get your input on that.
I could not relate to that situation more. I've been individual contributor forever. I dipped my toe, in sales management a couple times, just with one or two people, one person underneath me, young sales rep right out of college, which was a lot of fun. And I wasn't truly doing sales management. I was sort of just doing some training and mentorship. And, I had the opportunity, our director of sales, turned into our COO and then into our president recently. And I had the sort of door open to go into the sales management role. And I thought about it for a while. And, I just, when you do the pros and cons, everything I love about my job is opposite. And so I think people think, hey, I've done really well in sales for 10, 12, 15 years, whatever it is, maybe sooner, the next logical step on my resume is sales management. But with that, you trade, some earning opportunity, you trade some freedom, you trade a lot of freedom, and then you trade the hunt for the most part. Sometimes they're dual roles, but that's tough. But I like to, you bring it all the way back to when people used to have to go out and spear woolly mammoths. There was probably in those tribes, right, a certain type of person, our Native Americans, the people who went out to get a buffalo and bring it back for everybody to eat. Those are different type of people who like to do that. So if you love going out to spear the woolly mammoth and bring it back for everybody to cook it and eat it and feed, the tribe, you're probably not going to like sitting back, at the village or what have you, waiting for people to come back. You're going to miss it. You're going to miss the hunt. And I really enjoy, the chase, right? And so if you don't enjoy that, maybe it is time to move into sales management if you want to get off the grind. But like you said, it's so satisfying to, start the process, especially if it's a cold prospecting effort. You grab control of the situation. You control your own process and your own territory, and you sort of bring the customer through. And it's fun because a lot of times the customer doesn't really know what they want. They think they know what they want. So it's your opportunity to be strategic and lead them through and specify products that are very sticky to your company. We work off of drawings and prints for the most part.
Mhm.
And so I, like to call it sticky to print, right? So you're strategically going out, you're finding that target, you're getting them interested. And then all of a sudden you're in the sales process and you're locking things in that are unique to you and your company. And then you have that business for a long time. And I love the fact that the individual contributor, your job done well, creates growth and jobs within your company.
Yeah.
When I started at my company, and it's not to say this was all me, there's huge group effort and other salespeople and support and leadership, but I believe we were like 30 people maybe, or 35 people. And now we're 100 plus and part of a bigger organization. And we've created all these really good manufacturing jobs in our area, and we've created really good management jobs, and it's a great place to work. So it's kind of cool that you can individually influence, your company saying, oh my God, we got to hire some people. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. To be part of that.
Yeah.
And to think just to kind of go back a little bit, maybe some of those projects that you brought in, you were just pumped up because you got a meeting with the
Absolutely.
buyer or the director of engineering, right? That was a win at the time, getting a
Absolutely.
face to face, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
I have one that's coming full circle, and I love. I was just trying to think back. Where did we originally meet these people? And so I'm working on a really really large project in the defense sector with one of my customers, and so. I was thinking about us. I know I talked to their owner, years back, and then I got into an association where this company was, and that's where I really built the relationship. But I actually cold messaged this guy before LinkedIn was a swamp, when it was actually pretty good. And I had cold messaged the president of this company, and he wrote back and said, wow, that's kind of good timing. Our new strategy involves those type of products and higher end materials. And, then I ended up, a week later doing like it was funny. It wasn't that long ago, but it wasn't even Zoom. It was just like me on the phone with him,
Yeah.
and both of us on the website of my company, and I'm just taking them through, hey, click this, click that. And so we didn't do much. They finally gave us some opportunities about a year later. And now they're a relatively large customer. And then they just came to me with probably the biggest project in my pipeline currently for an individual customer. So just to go back and think, man, that was one LinkedIn message 10 years ago, wherever it was. It's really fun to see that.
Yeah. That's very rewarding. Just like you said, just getting that phone call, that first meeting, and then have it, maybe a couple of years later, a year later, see what it's done.
And what I would say, especially, when you talk about the confidence issue with young reps or new reps trying to prospect, a fun little exercise is go find a seasoned rep, or ask the manager, hey, I want you to take 5 accounts that you've been, you closed, 5 to 10 years back, and just add up the total sales, right? So year after year from, call it 2015 to 2025. And you're going to realize like those 5 or 10 accounts, they've bought millions and millions and millions of dollars. Some companies, depending on what you sell, hundreds of millions, of dollars collectively, and show the person with the comments, hey, I was nervous to call this guy too. And, I was nervous about prospecting, or it was tough for me, but, I did it 10 years back. And, this is the money that this customer has spent with our company. They didn't know our company before I called. Right. And so it's kind of a fun exercise just to show them it's real, that people, will do business with your company. There's demand.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
This has been an interesting conversation. I know there's a few other things that we're going to talk about, but I think I'm going to take you up on what you said earlier, and maybe we'll run it again and cover at some other point and cover some of the other topics. The pricing is something that's interesting. I wanted to get your thoughts on, but
Sure.
let's save it for another time.
No, that sounds like a good idea.
All right.
Remember, if it's all price, the internet can do our job.
Yeah, right. Okay. Okay. Hey, thanks a lot, Dominic. And we're going to get you back to talk about some other things. So appreciate your time.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.